welcome to another episode of In the Know, where we bring you local dignitaries, important business people, and residents into conversations so that you also can be in the know. Today, we have invited a very special guest, Bob Kulpinski, who is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Taylor Morrison Houston. Bob is going to share with us what is actually going on in the housing and new home market here in Houston, what we're seeing and what the trends look like they're going to be, and what opportunities there may be for those of you who are wanting and needing a home right now. Bob, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Hank. Thanks for having me.
So tell me, Bob, what are you seeing today? We talked about protocol with one of your community sales managers just the other day. What are you seeing traffic-wise? What's going on in the market? How's inventory? So many questions. I'm sure you have most of those answers as one of the major and primary home builders here in the Houston market.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Hank. In general, we've had to make a lot of adjustments, obviously, in addressing the market conditions, right? And that starts with how we screen our prospects when they come through the door that you talked about just the other day. But here in the Houston market and nationally, frankly, in general, real estate has adjusted, but we have to keep in mind that inventory, finished inventory or resale inventory is relatively low, not only locally here, but on a national basis. And what that means is that we have to make sure that we understand people's motivations for coming out, because when they do come out to the communities and there is still traffic out there, that we understand how to help them in very, very finite terms. Traffic has dropped off clearly in recent weeks, but the quality of the traffic has actually increased dramatically. And it's found a new equilibrium so that the people walking through the door are there because there's something that's happened in their life that's changed. And it could be, believe it or not, relocation, because we're still getting relocation buyers coming into the Houston market. It could be an apartment lease is up, or they're dissatisfied with the current conditions of living in close proximity to people in an apartment building, with touching railings and doorknobs and whatnot in a mass living arrangement. Or maybe they've had a life circumstance change, whether they've recently had a child, they've had a child move out of the house, they've had a change in marital status, either getting married or getting divorced, or potentially people have combined households with parents moving in, etc. So there's a lot of reasons that people are out there and looking. And despite what we hear in the market with the virus as well as oil prices here in Houston, there is strong demand and consistent demand for housing based on the traffic that we're seeing and the conversion rates that we have in our communities.
Wow. Well, my goodness, that's a whole lot of valuable information. Let me break down a couple of questions. First question I have is, why would it be that inventories are low right now? Is it not across the country? Is it not usually this time of the year where the builders crank up to have product ready during the, quote, the selling season, when people are moving most of the time between school years and that?
It's a really good question. I think historically over the last several years, builders have gotten smarter at their business. And while there are builders that actually are inventory builders, in general, builders are more risk averse to put inventory on the ground on the if come. So while it's a general trend, I think smart builders are actually looking at their balance sheets and making sure they have a solid balance sheet performance, regardless of what was happening well before this, heading into the spring selling season. There has been a general affordability issue going on in housing nationally as interest rates have declined and the millennial buyer is coming into the market. So the need for size and a higher price point, we see builders taking a different approach to how they're putting inventory on the ground. And here in Houston, what that means is that smaller lot sizes, smaller finished product is one end of the spectrum. And we have this barbell effect where you have the higher end baby boomer, let's say, who is more than able to purchase what they want on a cash basis, but they want to find exactly the right thing. So they're willing to build. And we don't need to put inventory on the ground to hope that we satisfy people. That's what resale's for. We're here to help people understand that they need something that is fitting their needs exactly. And there's always a compromise in this process. It's either time, price, selections, floor plan, community, whatever it is. And buyers in today's environment are looking for something that meets their needs exactly. And builders have responded ahead of the curve.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. You know, I guess I can speak firsthand, being in the real estate business, that niche that you're talking about of needing something with the quality and with the specifications, et cetera, that's something that you feel that need. Taylor Morrison and in your Darling Homes division also feel that need quite well here in Houston, and have communities all across the city that have been taking care of those types of buyers. So, you know, kudos to you. Let me ask you, Bob, the construction sites and the construction workers. So where are they? Is everything on track, and are all the supply chains open and working well, or are there going to be some minor delays in, say, deliveries of homes that would have been on track just 2 months ago before all of this coronavirus situation?
That's another good question. Obviously, it's a little tough to predict that. There's a whole bunch of closings that have to happen for the year for all the builders here in Houston. Our number of housing starts and housing permits is continuing to have some stability to it, despite what's happening with the oil markets, and we may see those things change. But I think our trade base changed fundamentally a number of years ago, when the housing market 10, 12 years ago really changed dramatically. And our trade base actually never came back in terms of quantity of construction workers. So what builders are doing today to keep them active is making sure we have a consistent flow of starts. And consistent flow of starts just means that we have to make sure we have solid buyers on our books. We won't start a home today that is not qualified, well qualified, and actually has loan approval early in the process, just because we're not going to put our assets at risk, much the way other builders will. So to do that, we have to be in constant communication with our vendors and trade partners to make sure that we're staging our construction in the right areas. But we've already had to forward buy several months ago, when trade wars started, with some of our suppliers when they're sourcing products, let's say from over in China and whatnot. We've forward bought, or our suppliers have forward bought, many of the products that are going into our homes, so that we're not going to be caught short by and large. Obviously, there's always going to be the chance of that one-off situation happening, but we feel fairly well positioned with our trade partners to deliver homes when they're supposed to deliver, weather, notwithstanding. So that's always a wild card that we have here in Houston.
Mm-hmm. So, Bob, are you experiencing any cancellations or defer requests on deferring timing for closings due to, obviously, the coronavirus, and more importantly, in this Houston market, the price of oil?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have put into place. Let's back up a second. We have a very diverse economy here in Houston from a demographic perspective. We're still heavily oil dependent, as much as we like to diversify into medical and aerospace and whatnot. We still have a heavy dependence upon oil. So there is some trepidation, particularly among higher end buyers for job security, bonuses, etc. But there's also a relatively higher qualification of those buyers as well. So they're smart. They're looking for ways to diversify their risk. And in some cases, we're seeing some cancellations or some increased risk of cancellation. And we're taking those things on a case-by-case basis. When it comes to, let's say, the diversity in terms of nationality of our buyers here, mortgage products have an effect on that. As we mentioned, like foreign national loans or non-qualifying mortgages might be a little bit more challenging today, and that's a very recent development. But we've been impacted by the virus with buyers that are overseas or have traveled overseas and need to quarantine or can't get back, and the embassies aren't open to do a remote closing in some of those locations. So we've had to adjust, obviously. We want people to be in their homes. We've built them homes that are their dreams. and we work with them through those situations. But yeah, absolutely. We have to be responsive, and to say that everything is, um, business as usual would be an understatement, and it wouldn't be the truth, frankly.
You shared with me earlier as we were having a preliminary conversation before going live on this filming that you see, and it opened my eyes immediately, that the where people, with the stock market being in the situation it is in, and probably will continue to be in for quite a while now until we get some stabilization, that they're placing placing hard-earned money into your home and into housing is probably one of the wisest moves someone could make. They don't make any more of this real estate stuff, do they? They don't make any more land, right?
That's true. That's true. It's not the first thing that comes to mind logically, right? When you talk about housing and you talk about the response of buyers relative to economic fluctuations, or fluctuations specifically in the stock market and the value of people's portfolios, most people don't think that, oh gosh, a change in value leads to a desire to purchase a home. When in fact, the older demographics are doing exactly that. Our age restricted communities, or our communities that are dealing with a more established buyer financially, they are looking very critically and saying, hey, if I buy now, I can get my money in a safe place. We actually incentivize buyers to give us extra earnest monies, and it's basically allowing us to secure the additional deposits from a buyer, but also giving them a return on that extra deposit, because it is a lot of money. And sometimes we have people go to contract where they will pay us upfront for the final price of the home, even while they're building, because we're giving them additional incentive dollars to entrust us with those funds. So it's kind of like a win-win for both us and the purchaser, that they know their money's going into a solid investment. And here in Houston, the master plan communities provide that flight to quality security that buyers are looking for. We don't have huge appreciation as a general rule of thumb here in Houston, but we also, in the right communities, we don't have value fluctuation. We don't have things collapsing in master plan communities. We have maybe a sideways move versus the ups and downs that you see within the stock market today. So people that have played it conservative or have moved their money well in advance of this event, because there was a lot of talk, chatter in the market about, what's going to happen in 2020 coming into an election year, who knows? There were some people that are more conservative with their money, and they're probably in a better position than other people to take advantage of that now.
Most interesting, most interesting. Bob, you mentioned earlier that the people maybe are considering moving during this situation, or changing the way their lifestyle will be, because they don't want to be on touching handrails and pushing elevator buttons and things like that. That does make a whole lot of sense. I think we're all going to change the way we live. I think the handshake that has been traditional forever is probably going to go to the wayside for quite a while, because that's the first touch point that's so scary. But let me get to my question, and that is, so what's going to happen, say, in the 55 and older communities that are very amenity-driven communities, and the amenities obviously are amenities for all residents, and so that would then necessitate for there to be many touch points that by multiple or many people at a time.
Sure. And we've had to close down some of those amenities. It's very selective in what's open, what's not for us around the country. Obviously, just like in our models, any kind of high traffic area like that, a clubhouse or whatever, in our age restricted communities, we have sanitizing processes multiple times throughout the day. Obviously, things that are touched by a lot of people, doorknobs, et cetera, doors themselves, any kind of tabletops, surfaces, those things are sanitized on a regular basis. But yeah, we do have to be a little bit more restrictive. But in time, this will pass, and the cleaning supply availability, which is starting to rebound a little bit, will be easier to get those supplies. And it's just a habit of doing what we should naturally do anyway, right? Wash your hands, make sure you're keeping yourself away from people if you're having a bit of an illness or whatever. Just using common sense more than anything.
So no more of the, oh, it's my allergies. I'm
Well,
so
no, no,
tired
no,
of
no.
hearing
Here
that.
in Houston, it could be. It could be. You know,
Yeah,
I
but
don't
many
have
times,
allergies.
from experience, I've been with clients practicing our, my profession, real estate, and it's the, it's my allergies, and then 2 days later I come down sick. And it's like, how, I think that's going to change too now. I mean,
It
allergies
could.
are going to be
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that we're going to look at much differently. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but I think that what you said is things are going to change quite a bit in how we live our lives. And maybe that's going to make it a whole lot safer for everyone. I mean, we
sure.
keep on losing sight of the lives, the loss to the regular flu and other things due to us not using these safe practices. Of
Yeah,
course, that's a whole nother
I
topic.
would agree. No, I would agree. And it's also forcing us to change the way we sell homes. So we now sell more things virtually. And we've done this very, very quickly in the last couple of weeks, updating our website, reinventing our website, making the click-throughs easier, but also doing a lot of things like we're doing, talking over Zoom, doing Facebook Live demonstrations, doing Skype presentations. Obviously, DocuSign makes signing purchase agreements easier than ever, but we're demonstrating homes virtually with Matterport tours and whatnot. And if you can buy a Tesla for $100,000 online with a few selection, colors, and choices, which is an expensive car, relatively speaking, you can buy a $500,000 home much the same way, and that's what it's moving to. So what portion of our business ultimately moves that way, I don't know yet, but I can tell you it'll be a permanent fixture of our business, even after we're through all these disruptions that we're currently going through.
Well, bravo for that. Bob, we're sort of running out of time, and I don't want to, there's so many other things I'd like to talk to you about. First, I'd like to know if you would be willing to come back maybe next week and update us again.
I would be. I have to guard my schedule. I'm pulled in a lot of different ways, but if I can do it, you bet I will.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us any last minute advice, and I say us, to our viewers, if they are, as we started to talk about, if they're in the market for a home, what are some of the steps that they should be taking right now and following the protocol that you all have in place too?
Sure, sure. Well, in our case, it's by appointment only. So to come out to an appointment, we're going to make sure you've answered our screening questions about COVID-19 negatively, so that we're not putting you or any of our people at risk. But you really need to be pre-qualified. The more deposit that you put down with the builder is going to make your purchase agreement stronger. It's a fantastic time to buy, quite frankly, because the competition for those home sites and the inventory, while it is low, there is still competition. It's lower today than it has been. And while builders have not had to really heavily incentivize people to purchase homes right now, because they need to buy, those that are out there need to buy. And a lot of times builders respond and help create circumstantial urgency with discounts and whatnot. That's not happening. So if you want the right selection of home site, if you want the right selection of the inventory home, and you are pre-qualified, now's a great time to do it. But you need to be prepared when you walk in that sales office, and you need to be prepared to move, because the impact of internet home consultants is driving a much greater conversion rate for appointments once they come out to a community. So what might be there today has a much greater chance of being gone in a day or so, just because the people walking through have very, very specific needs and timing needs. So I wouldn't hesitate. I would go forward. If you're ready to go, now's a great time to go.
Once again, we want to thank you, Bob Kulpinski, for joining us today and giving us your insight on what's going on in the marketplace today in the new home building business. You are in the know with Hank Van Joslin.